Two of the NFC West squads faced off against each other on Thursday night, and then the other two teams lost off last-minute interceptions. And nonetheless, this division is still one of the best in the NFL through the first month of the season. Welcome into our Week 6 edition of the NFC West Huddle. I am Lauren Helbrecht in Seattle. I am joined by our expert panel of reporters from around the division. Robbie Baker in Phoenix, Ryan Dyrud of the LAFD network in Los Angeles, and we're having some technical difficulties in San Francisco, so it is just the three of us today, gentlemen. Welcome to the show.
How we doing? Happy to be here. Always San Francisco's fault, right?
All right, well, let's take a look at your Week 6 matchups going into this. We're going to start in Arizona. Cardinals taking on the Indianapolis Colts. They're kind of a surprise good team so far this season. Daniel Jones having a career resurgence. We'll talk a little bit more later in the show about those quarterbacks doing well later in their career. Cards coming off a loss where they blew a 21-3 lead against the Titans at home. Robbie, how concerned are you going into this game, Cardinals against the Colts, who are 4-1 so far this season?
Yeah, let's start hammering the panic button here in the desert. What happened last Sunday, I was at State Farm Stadium. I still cannot entirely wrap my head around what I witnessed in the final 10 minutes or so of that football game. I mean, Kyler Murray said it at the podium when that game ended. That was basically how to lose a football game, 101. It's going to be very hard for this Cardinals team to rebound on the road against the Colts, a Colts team that is a top 3 defense in points given up per game. It's a top 5 offense in yards per game and points per game. The Colts look like they are one of the best teams in football right now. Meanwhile, the Cardinals are reeling a little bit after 3 straight field goal walk-off losses. They're the only team in NFL history to be walked off in 3 straight weeks in the same fashion. This is also 2 straight practices, Wednesday and Thursday, where Kyler Murray has not practiced. He is still out with a foot injury, an injury that we think he suffered on the play where he got hit in the face with the snap and there was a fumble and that whole situation at the end of the game. He went to the locker room after that play. The Cardinals never really confirmed or denied if the injury to his foot happened on that play or if it was on that series. But nonetheless, no Kyler Murray at practice so far this week. So it seems to be trending towards Jacoby Brissett starting at quarterback. This is no knock on Jacoby Brissett. I talked to Marvin Harrison Jr., Paris Johnson Jr., guys in the locker room at practice this week. They all have a lot of confidence in Jacoby Brissett. But this is already going to be an uphill battle for the Cardinals going on the road to a 4-1 Colts team. And if you got to do it with your backup quarterback as well, when we already know there's injuries to the running backs and the cornerbacks, I mean, the reason that the loss to the Titans was so bad for this team was not only did they lose to the Titans in the way that they lost, but the schedule is only going to get harder from here. And this Cardinals season, unfortunately, feels like it is on the precipice of going sideways real fast.
I would agree with how can you lose a football game and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways, and the Cardinals were able to do all of them. I mean, dropping the ball at the goal line. We've already saw it this season. Robbie, how did the team do that? We saw it this season. Yeah. You'd think a coach would say, hey, guys, remember when you cross the goal line to actually cross it before you do anything with the football?
It's one of those things that it happens, maybe once a year. A guy fumbles at the 1-yard line, and then you don't see it again because it's coaching tape. It happens. The fact that it happened in back-to-back weeks, just the week before, Amari DiMercato fumbled at the 1-yard line. Another player did it, and then the next week, Amari DiMercato fumbles at the 1-yard line. But, it wasn't just that. It was that. It was Kyler Murray getting hit in the face with the snap. It was Rabbit, the cornerback for the Cardinals, getting an interception in the red zone and then fumbling, and then no Cardinals player could pick up the ball. They kick it into the end zone, and then Seattle's favorite son, Tyler Lockett, falls on the fumble in the end zone to score for the Titans. I swear, Tyler Lockett, no matter what season it is, no matter what team he plays for, he finds a way to break the Cardinals' hearts. I don't know how he does it.
I honestly was watching some of the lowlights from that game with the sounds like of the clown car, like when the ball's just bouncing everywhere. Like, how is that possibly happening? All right, let's let Robbie breathe for a second. Ryan, let's move to you because Robbie needs to kind of process what just happened last week. So, Ryan, the Rams heading into this week on extra rest. They're eager to bounce back from a tough Thursday night loss against the Niners. We don't have anyone from San Francisco here to talk smack, so you're here to defend the Rams going into Week 6. They're heading to Baltimore to take on a probable Lamar-less Ravens squad. Robbie, I just have to ask, is there overthinking this game, or is it just obviously without Lamar, it's an easy game for the Rams against Baltimore?
Well, and luckily, or not luckily, but last week I got plenty of a smack talk since we did this after the Thursday game. So everyone got that out of their system last week. So now we can look forward, thank you, Lauren, into Baltimore. And no, this is, if anything, the Rams should have learned a lot from last week, because I think they kind of looked past how good the Niners could be based on all their injuries and Mac Jones and missing everyone on the defensive line and basically having the reincarnate of Jerry Rice and Kendrick Bourne. And we saw how well that went. So this Ravens team, even without Lamar, should not be slept on. Obviously, the Ravens are having a really rough start to their season, have not looked like a John Harbaugh Ravens team at all. I think significantly on defense, giving up 4 touchdowns, giving up 41 points, more than 4 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns just to CJ Stroud last week to a Houston Texans team that have not looked very good this year. So Baltimore is going to be doing everything they can, obviously at home. It's a 10 a.m. Pacific time game, which never bodes great for these West Coast teams. But, Rams got to be able to bounce back, and luckily getting that kind of mini bye, as everyone calls it, after Thursday night game. They are relatively healthy. You have right tackle Rob Havenstein and tight end Colby Parkinson are really the only 2 guys that have been kind of held out during practice this week, so they're healthy, and they're going to be looking to bounce back and get that bad taste out of your mouth. When you have a loss like that, you don't want to let that define your season, and when you can bounce back and win in a big way, it can be forgotten and moved on, and usually Sean McVay teams typically do move on. But similar to Robbie, it's been kind of a rough week in LA for Rams and for the Rams fans. So if they can get to Baltimore and right the ship against a most likely Lamar-less Jackson team, then things will look better than where they are now, especially sitting at 4-2 instead of 3-3, which would be real bad.
Here in Seattle, we've seen a lot of memes online of Ravens fans yearning for Mike Macdonald, the new head coach for Seattle, saying, "We miss you. Please come back. We need you back here." And obviously that's more on the defensive side, but a 1-4 Ravens team was not the team I was expecting to see so far this season, Ryan.
Yeah, it's really shocking because, you lose your quarterback. It's obviously a huge deal. Lamar Jackson, all-world talent, MVP class in the league, but he doesn't play defense. Yeah. He's not the one giving up 41 points a game, as you mentioned, with McDonald. And there's a lot of hype around their defensive coordinator, a young guy that they've kind of promoted within. But, it's just not a John Harbaugh-like team. So hopefully the Rams can exploit that. But, the Ravens are looking to turn their season around, too. So this is really I don't want to call it a trap game, but it's one of those. They're not really playing, I think, a 1-4 caliber team. So it'll be interesting to see, Lauren, how it goes down.
Yeah, for both of your teams, it's so interesting to think about a 4-1 Colts team and a 1-4 Ravens team. And that's just the example of you can talk so much preseason and then you don't actually know what's going to happen until the football starts getting played. Now, as for the Seahawks, I'm not going to play the shoulda, woulda, coulda game, but they could be a couple plays away from being 5-0 this season. Obviously, that's not what happened. So the Seahawks 3-2 heading into Week 6, and Robbie, you were talking about those last-minute interceptions, last-minute bad plays in Arizona, That's exactly what happened in Seattle. The Seahawks looked like they had a chance to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then Sam Darnold's pass bounces off a helmet, gets intercepted, and the defense has under a minute to stop the Bucs from going in and scoring, and they can't do that. And then Tampa Bay walks out with a 38-35 win in Seattle. And this was a quarterback matchup. Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold were playing out of their minds. Over 720 combined yards with fewer than 10 interceptions in this game. And so, yes, the Seahawks are now 3-2. That was not a good game. It's the first game this season that the Hawks defense has given up that many yards and that many points, but they had a lot of injuries. So now they're heading down to Jacksonville to take on another surprising 4-1 team in the Jaguars, who are coming off a game where they beat the Chiefs in Week 5 on Monday Night Football. So now we're talking Sam Darnold versus Trevor Lawrence, who have both needed a little extra time in their career to hit their strides right now. So Darnold and the Hawks are undefeated on the road so far this season. He's playing his best ball. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in this season so far, completing 73.1% of his passes, over 1,200 yards, 9 TDs, only 3 picks through the first 5 games. Look, the stats are there. Sam Darnold is playing really well, but then obviously so is Trevor Lawrence. I think, though, that this Seahawks team is so good on the road under Mike Macdonald. They have over a 90% road win rate under their head coach. I think that they can go into Duval and take the win over that solid Jacksonville team. All right, let's move on, gentlemen, to some concerns. Sorry, Robbie, we've already talked a bit about concerns for you, and so we're going to keep going. What position is the most concerning for your team through 5 games so far this season? Robbie, I'll give you a second to debrief. You don't want to think about the bad. So let's make Ryan think of the bad first. Ryan, start with the Rams.
Yeah, it's definitely the cornerback position. You know, this was a group that heading into the offseason had concerns with, you know, depth, with like who's the true CB1. You look at Akella Witherspoon, who at the time wasn't re-signed. They ended up re-signing him to a 1-year deal. And since then now he has been hurt, put on the IR, and Sean McVay has suggested he might be available by, you know, week 11 or 12 at that point. So he's out for the foreseeable future. They didn't draft a single cornerback. They didn't sign a single undrafted free agent cornerback. And so it is definitely a position that is lacking in terms of top tier talent. So a lot of chatter this week, especially after getting really exposed, as I mentioned earlier, by Kendrick Bourne, by a somewhat hapless San Francisco passing game, or at least so we thought it would be. But they looked great against this unit. So what will the Rams do moving forward? Will they hit free agency, which obviously not a ton of options this late in the season, but obviously trades. We've seen now some trades happen in the last couple of days with the Jaguars, with the Browns, with cornerbacks actually being dealt. So maybe the Rams go after a Jalen Ramsey-like trade package, which we've seen them do in the past with that kind of F them picks mentality, if I'm allowed to say that. But I think that's definitely a position that they will address, because when you look at the offense and the depth they have there, when you look at the defensive line and how they're able to create havoc with their young pass rushers, it's really going to boil down to the secondary on how far this team can go. And obviously sitting at 3-2, there's a lot of things they need to improve on, but adding a true top contending CB1 will be a step in the right direction that can really lock down, you know, that top wide receiver going up against. So that's the group I would look forward to see if it is concerning right now. Sean McVay said this week it's not something they've talked about, which is very surprising. I don't know if that's just maybe coaches talk, didn't want to give anything away to the media, because I don't know how you wouldn't talk about it, seeing how it's played all season long. But we will see if they do address anything with, you know, the trade deadline, about a month away or so. So plenty of time to address it if need be.
Are there those CB1s out there that the Rams can target? Because that is such a prime position, but there's not a lot of great CB1s who are involved in trade packages right now. Obviously, we saw one earlier this week, but even then, between the Browns and was it the Jags? I believe so. Mm-hmm. Those aren't big names. It was a trade, but it kind of was a 1-to-1 trade.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And you got to look at teams that are going to be sellers at this point. And I look to the Browns, who have, you know, Denzel Ward is a name that's a former high draft pick that potentially, if they're going to be true sellers and kind of build this thing down. So there are some names out there. Right now it's so early because, you know, not many teams are going to be sellers only 5 weeks into the season. But the Rams have proven year in and year out, you know, whether it was Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey, all these different, Odell Beckham Jr., who was a free agent at the time, they'll be willing to make the move if necessary. So we'll see in the next kind of 3 weeks how that unfolds.
And speaking of the Browns, they were sellers earlier this week, trading Joe Flacco to the Bengals as they're dealing with an injured Joe Burrow. So they have proved that they can be sellers already going into this week. All right, Robbie, let's switch to you. What position keeping your eyes on in Arizona?
Is it a cheat if I just say all of them?
Hey, I'm about to talk about defense, so you can talk about the whole team if you want.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, look, when you lose a game like the Cardinals did against the Titans, that was kind of a shock to the system, I think, for the fan base, to the organization, everybody, because this, and I should put the caveat on this too, this is year 3 of Jonathan Gannon and Monty Ossenfort, and this rebuild of this Cardinals team coming off of the Cliff Kingsbury era. This was supposed to be year 3. They spent money in free agency. Calais Campbell, Josh Sweat. They brought in guys to make big impacts. Another big draft class as well. The year 2 leap we anticipated for Marvin Harrison Jr., year 7 for Kyler Murray. Everything leading into this season was, okay, this Cardinals team is in a position to make a playoff push. The talk going into this year was it would be a disappointment if this team didn't make the playoffs. This team now is below 500, coming off that loss to the Titans, and you look what's coming up. They don't play an opponent under 500 currently on their schedule until week 15 of the season. They have the hardest strength of schedule left in the National Football League right now, and they are already treading water. Now, all that stuff combined with the fact that Kyler Murray is currently injured. Their starting running back, really had so many running back injuries with James Conner and Trey Benson. The Cardinals starting running back, and this is no offense to Michael Carter, but he started the season on the practice squad. Now he is the starting running back for the Arizona Cardinals. And to be fair, Michael Carter played well against the Tennessee Titans. Outside of Marvin Harrison Jr., they still have not developed a viable number 2 wide receiver. Trey McBride is an all-pro, all-world tight end. He hasn't been able to get his footing this year. The offensive line has kind of been a mess. Even when James Conner was healthy, the run game just it was not efficient at any point this season. And honestly, defensively, when you look at this Cardinals team, the defense has not been bad. They're holding teams to less than 20 points per game. It hasn't been as consistent as we had hoped, but the pass rush has been better with the ageless wonder Calais Campbell. Josh Sweat has 5 sacks this season through 5 weeks of the season. So he's been a good impact addition. The secondary is still banked up. They're still young, but the back end with Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson is held up okay. But just overall top down, the concern is more if this thing starts to it's already started to go sideways. If it continues to go sideways, what does the future of this team look like? Because they're in year 3 of this rebuild. If this thing really goes sideways here, are we watching the last year of Kyler Murray here? Are we watching the potential another regime change here? I mean, that's how big that Titans loss was here. Is in a week it went from, okay, the Cardinals could beat the Titans, they get above 500, we're getting the train rolling again, to after that loss, all of a sudden the questions have become, are we on the beginning of a rebuild again here? I mean, that's kind of what things feel like around the Cardinals right now.
It's hard for a Titans fan to potentially hear that and think, wow, losing to us means that you're thinking, oh my gosh, we have to blow it all up. But sorry to put you on the spot, Robbie.
Hey, they were 0-10.
I
the
know.
Cardinals were the 10-game losing streak, and if they would have lost last Sunday, it would have been the longest losing streak in Titans history since they were the Houston Oilers. And I know the Titans have NFL players too. Cam Ward had almost 200 yards himself in the 4th quarter. He looked like a playmaker. It's just the way that they lost that game and how much was riding on it for the Cardinals, because they needed that win to start to get some positive vibes back in the locker room, and it did not go that way.
Didn't go that way, and it was important for them to stay in the hunt in this division. We'll talk about it a little later in the show, but this division has been playing so well that being under 500 through week 5 is actually a really bad thing, whereas a lot of other divisions in the NFL would be happy with 2 wins so far. A Cardinals team looks around them and says, hey, that's not good enough right now. So I understand where you're coming from. It is a little brutal to think one game with the clown car sound could really make you think, oh gosh, we might have to blow this whole thing up. So as for the Seahawks, I mean, obviously they lost in that last minute way as well, but they were down 3 defensive starters before the game even started, and then more guys on defense got injured throughout this matchup to the Bucs. So missing beforehand, cornerback Devin Witherspoon, he has a knee injury. Outside linebacker DeMarcus Lawrence had a quad injury, and then safety Julian Love had a hamstring. Then Reek Woolen left the game with a concussion. The quarterback has been limited in practice. He was limited today. And then rookie safety Nick Emenwari briefly left the game. He came back, but he had an ankle injury. So I'm just paying special attention to the Seahawks defense because I can't compliment Sam Darnold enough so far this season, how the offense is doing, and then how wide receiver Jackson Smith and Jigba is doing. I could list a number of offensive players that are doing really well. The big issue in this Bucs game was the defense. Like I said, that last-second interception by Sam Darnold might be the catalyst for the loss, but at the end of the day, the defense could have made a stop, and they were not able to stop Baker Mayfield. They gave up over 300 yards to Baker Mayfield. That was the first time this season. So if the defense can't get stops against a team where their offense is really chugging along and scoring 35 points, you're going to have an issue. So I'm paying special attention to the Seahawks defense and their injury bug. As all coaches will say, well, everyone gets injured in the NFL, and we can't blame things on injury, and we can play ring around the rosy, we can move things around in the secondary. Yeah, you can, but when you're going up against top-level quarterbacks like a 4-1 Trevor Lawrence squad in Jacksonville, you can only move things around so much until you need those guys to get back. So I'm just paying attention to the Seahawks defense. Right now, I mean, I'm looking at the injury report. Questionable. So it's TBD. To be determined. We're got a few more days until this game, but if the injured guys are still injured, we need people who are on the practice squad or second, third string to really step up. All right, let's pivot because we've talked about it a lot so far in the show, but we haven't hit the nail on the head. How good is the NFC West right now compared to the other divisions? Robbie, I feel like you should start because Arizona's on the outside looking in as the only team under 500 in a division with 3 teams who are looking like they're in playoff contention right now.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to power rank it, if you will. I mean, the AFC North is probably the worst division right now in football, more so just because of all the injuries those teams are dealing with. At this point, if the Steelers don't win the AFC North, then I don't know what's going on in Pittsburgh, just because I assume the Ravens will get back, to being the Ravens, but they just have so many injuries on defense as well. And then when you look at where this NFC West division, right now the Cardinals are kind of weighing it down a little bit right now. But I don't know if it's the best division in football, but I think you guys would agree that no matter what the season is, this is probably the division that always seems to have the most parity, and it's always one of the most competitive. And coming into this year, we kind of knew that too, that we hoped the Cardinals could be in the mix, the Seahawks were going to be like, there's every year 3 out of the 4, if not all 4 teams, feel like they have a chance to win and make a run at this division. And right now, the Cardinals maybe don't feel like that way, and being kind of behind the 8 ball, they aren't in a position to make a run right now. But 1 or 2 weeks could change things there. I don't know if it's the best division in football, but as of right now, it's probably the most competitive, I would say, in terms of the parity that we see in this division.
Robbie, I'd have to add to that, just statistically speaking, how good the offense is in this division so far. And Ryan, I know you know this well because the top 2 receivers statistically in the NFL right now are from this division, in Jackson Smith and Jigba at number 2, and then in Puka Nacua at number 1. So as for the Rams and contributing right now in the NFC West, I feel like the Rams are booing them up. How do you think this division's competing right now?
Yeah, I've always felt, and we talked a little bit on this show kind of preseason where we'd rank them. And I always felt like the NFC West was in that like kind of 2 or 3 spot. Really like the AFC West and some of the competitive advantages there. However, the Raiders have been like a dumpster fire. Not what we expected from kind of this, even though it's his first year with Pete Carroll, as you know well, up in Seattle, but it's been not good. So that's certainly taken that division down. Obviously, the Chiefs have struggled this year and not looked like the Chiefs. And then now the Chargers have been hit with the injury bug, and so they've lost 2 straight. So I think the AFC West is kind of knocked down a little bit. Robbie mentioned the AFC North. I think probably the NFC North is still the top division, I would say, when you look at how dominant the Lions have been, when you look at the Packers when healthy, how good they are. The Bears, I think, are surging right now with Caleb Williams. And the Vikings, we don't truly know just because of J.J. McCarthy's injuries, but I think they're a really solid squad led by KOC, their head coach. So I, though, might put the NFC West now up at 1 just because of what Robbie was saying with the consistency, with the competitiveness, and even a 2-3 Cardinals team been in every game. I mean, they've had an opportunity to win a bunch and just really shot themselves in the foot. The Rams, I think are a true Super Bowl contender if they can get things figured out. The Seahawks have been kind of one of the surprises of this year with how great Sam Darnold's been, and you've alluded to. And then the Niners, even being as injured they are, only have 1 loss. So you got to give them credit. So we might have to put the NFC West right now through 5 weeks at number 1, just because 1 through 4, I think on any given Sunday, any of those teams can win. They can probably also lose, but not every division can say, hey, this team can beat anybody any given Sunday.
and I've told both of you, but for those viewers who don't know, I came from covering the NFC North, where I was a Packers reporter for the last few years. So I know firsthand how hard that division is. They're currently the only division without a losing record. All of the teams have over 500 right now, or at or over 500. But I would agree that the NFC West is right there. I think the NFC North might be the best right now, and it's always hard when there's so many divisional games early, because then the teams are just beating each other up. Because as we said, I mean, the Seahawks lost at the very last second to San Francisco. San Francisco was able to eke out another win against the Rams. And so this team's kind of attacking each other, but they're all good. And even with the Cardinals, they've, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's 5 points combined in the total losses of the 3 games, right? I mean, those are close. Those are good games. And it might be ridiculous ways that they're losing, but they're still in the games. And so I found a stat. The combined records of all 4 teams outside the division is 8-4. And 3 of those 4 losses for this team for this division, came against teams that are 4-1. So the teams that are beating the NFC West are the best teams in the NFL right now. The NFC West has some of the best players on offense, like I mentioned, Puka Nacua, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Sam Darnold. Mac Jones is even playing out of his mind. We don't have San Francisco here, but they could easily be talking about how good Mac Jones is playing with an injured Brock Purdy. I mean, you have so many good players in this division, and when they aren't playing each other, they're doing really well. And that's where the losses are coming from, the best teams in the NFL. So I think it's one of the best. I also agree that we've only seen a month of football, and there's injuries, and there's rust, and there's going to be trades, and there's going to be weird stuff that happens because it's the NFL. But so far, pretty good division. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say
so
overall
far,
it's strong. The one request I would have for anybody watching is please, it's supposed to rain all weekend here. We're not prepared for rain in the desert. It's been a rough stretch for the Cardinals. Just send positive vibes to Arizona, please. Just we need some love, you know?
I don't know if that love will be coming from Seattle or Los Angeles, but maybe somewhere else around the NFL. Maybe San Francisco's not here. They can throw some love to Arizona because they weren't able to make it just because of technical difficulties. Well, that will do it for this edition of the NFC West Huddle. For Ryan and Robbie, and for those folks in San Francisco who weren't able to join us, I am Lauren in Seattle. Thank you again so much for tuning in. We'll have another edition next week.